Hello everyone, Charcoal here and welcome back to a closer look. Today we're looking at our favorite desert dwellers, the SandWings. I'll be covering their biology, society, and history, then giving them an overall score. Let's get started. SandWings are typically pretty thin and slender, with short horns that curve upwards and a sail that runs from the bridge of their nose to the end of their tail, where they have a venomous stinger. They can be colored like sand with some varying shades of brown mixed in, and they also have a scale pattern reminiscent of a snake, something especially noticeable on a dragon like Blister. As far as their other abilities, they can breathe fire, radiate warmth, withstand extreme heat, and go for long periods of time with very little food or water. Towns in the Sand Kingdom tend to form around oases, and dragons will very rarely deviate from this. A particularly notable one is the Scorpion Den, infamous for being a city ruled by criminals. Something else SandWings do is the Full Moon Festival. We don't know much about it aside from the fact that it involves a lot of dancing and partying whenever a full moon happens. As for royal challenges, it's typically the usual queen gets killed by a female relative, but they also use a jewel called the Eye of Onyx to verify if the new queen is really worthy of holding the throne. If not, simply touching it will kill them. I was really expecting to say more here, but despite how much focus they've gotten in the series, that's about it in terms of their society. Moving on, I guess. Thousands of years ago, SandWings were just one of 9 dragon tribes to inhabit Pyria, which at the time was ruled by humans. Eventually, dragons began growing in number, and just over 5,000 years ago, they overthrew humans as the dominant race on the continent in an event known today as the Scorching. After the Scorching, the SandWings settled into a kingdom in the desert on the neck of the dragon-shaped continent. The earliest queen of the SandWings that we know of was Queen Scorpion, about 2,000 years ago in the era of Darkstalker. She was essentially an ancient version of Queen Scarlet, very greedy and power-hungry. And for the first time in this closer look series, it's time for me to bring up animus magic. Animus magic is incredibly rare, and dragons born with it can basically enchant whatever they want to do whatever they want. Enter Jerboa, the SandWings' first known animus. Scorpion had her under her thumb and forced her to cast several spells, including creating the Eye of Onyx and several other magic items. Eventually, Jerboa got sick of Scorpion and fled the kingdom, and Scorpion would eventually meet her end with a magically induced heart attack from her former animus minion. Jerboa enchanted an animal egg to hatch into a dragonette clone of her, Jerboa II, which failed. The next attempt, Jerboa III, we'll call Boa. Jerboa treated her daughter like a pet, making her do all the menial tasks and resetting her to a dragonette whenever she grew old. The two lived together for literal centuries until Boa found out what her mother had been doing. She used a magic scroll to make herself an animus and froze her mother in a block of ice, burying it under their home. However, before she died, Jerboa cast a spell to make Boa lose part of her body with each spell she cast. Boa lived alone for several more centuries, and we'll come back to her later. 20 years before present day, the Sandwing Queen was Queen Oasis. One of her sons, Smolder, tried to elope with a cook named Palm. Once they were found out, Palm fled the palace with their egg, which would hatch into a dragon known as Onyx. Again, more on her later. Because now it's time to talk about what is probably the reason most of you clicked on this video, the War of Sandwing Succession. Probably on some random Tuesday afternoon, Queen Oasis was minding her own business when 3 humans, Heath, Stone, and Rose, snuck into the palace and stole a bunch of her treasure. Oasis chased them down but was killed. Unfortunately, the Eye of Onyx was buried with her, so it couldn't be used to choose a new queen right away. Her 3 daughters, Burn, Blister, and Blaze, couldn't decide who would be the next queen and ended up starting a war to figure it out. Burn was allied with the Skywings, Blister was allied with the Mudwings and Seawings, and Blaze was allied with the Icewings. Burn and Blister each had a handful of Sandwing followers, but most chose to side with Blaze. A little over a decade into the war, a Seawing commander named Tempest was assassinated during a strategy meeting, and Blister blamed the incident on the Mudwings. This caused them to abandon their alliance with her, and Burn later pressured them into joining her instead. Not long after, one of Burn's soldiers, Dune, was injured in battle by Icewing Frostbreath. Her top general and Dune's best friend, Sixclaws, abandoned Burn's army and took Dune to the Scorpion Den. Sixclaws would remain there, while Dune would eventually leave to join the Talons of Peace. A few years later, Thorn, the leader of the Outclaws who controlled the Scorpion Den at the time, had an egg with a Nightwing animus named Stonemover. After Stonemover hid himself away in Jade Mountain, Thorn laid her egg and buried it, entrusting Dune to protect it. However, Dune would take the egg to become the Sandwing Dragonette of Destiny, as he was one of the Guardians tasked with raising them. A few years after that, Thorn would adopt a Dragonette named Kibli, who was the son of Cobra and grandson of Vulture, 2 other prominent criminals in the Scorpion Den. Meanwhile, Sunny was growing up in the Dragonettes of Destiny's cave. When Queen Scarlet came knocking, Dune was killed, and while the other Dragonettes were taken to Scarlet's arena, Sunny was set aside to go to Byrne's Weirdling Tower. She would eventually be saved and escape with the others. For the rest of the first arc, Sunny mostly took a back seat until Book 5. When the news came out that the prophecy was fake, Sunny was basically the only one to still believe in it. She traveled to the Sand Kingdom and met Thorn and Kibli, went to meet Stonemover, and would eventually help call the 3 warring princesses to the stronghold to finally decide who would be the next queen. Blister gave Byrne a gift first, but it turned out to be a pair of Dragonbite Vipers, which killed her. Sunny is conveniently shown where Oasis's grave is and finds the Eye of Onyx, and Blister tries to grab it, but it disintegrates her. Blaze is the only sister to survive, but willingly forfeits when Sunny declares the new Sandwing Queen to be Thorn. 6 months later, Sunny would help found Jade Mountain Academy. The students included Kibli as well as Onyx, who was now secretly working with Vulture. Kibli went with the rest of the Jade Winglet on their quest to hunt down Queen Scarlet and didn't do a whole lot outside of being the group's jokester and moral support. While this is going on, Vulture and his Talons of Power organization took over the Scorpion Den in Thorn's absence and orchestrated a series of bombings around the kingdom to make Thorn look bad. When Darkstalker escaped the mountain, Kibli became Turtle's lifeline as he spied on Darkstalker. However, Kibli would have something to do soon enough as Onyx kidnapped Six Claw's daughter, Ostrich. Kibli and Winter went to the Sand Kingdom to rescue her. They encounter Vulture and he explains his grand plan to overthrow Thorn. He convinces Kibli to get Cobra into the palace, but Kibli rats them out. Cobra is arrested, but Vulture escapes. His current whereabouts are unknown. Onyx manages to convince Thorn to fight her for the throne, but when Kibli uses some magic bracelets to summon a sandstorm fearing Thorn would lose, the battle is called off and Onyx's leg is permanently crippled by falling debris. This ruined any chance of her trying for the throne again as she could no longer fight. Kibli later helps to bring down Darkstalker at the final battle at Jade Mountain by devising the empathy spell that gets the Nightwings and Icewings to stop fighting. Now it's time to talk about Boa again. After the whole Darkstalker scare, she decided the world could do without Animus magic for a while, and she casts a spell to strip all current Animus dragons of their powers. And trust me, I hate this just as much as you do. Later on, when the Pantalan dragons came to Pyria, Thorn participated in a summit with the other queens to decide what to do about the other mine situation, and she sent Kibli on the mission to Pantala. And that is where the SandWings history so far ends. So, my final thoughts? Put simply, I love the SandWings. Their designs are some of the most unique and interesting in the series, and it's always a joy to read about their kingdom. They're definitely one of my favorite tribes. 9 out of 10, the highest score so far. Time for fan art. Normally I'd choose my 5 favorites from what I got since the last recording, but I've only gotten 8 since the last one, so may as well show all of them. They are from Dagonella, Chloe the Dragon, Lilith Rainwing, Rose the Rainbonk, Dusky T, Tired and Lazy, Me1414, and Gambry GS. Thanks a bunch guys, and if any of you want to submit your own fan art, you can do so in my Discord server. This has been Wings of Charcoal, and I will see you all in the next video.